Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. A significant political showdown has erupted over the Special Parliamentary Session scheduled by the central government from September 18 to 23. The centre has remained tight-lipped about its plans, leaving room for speculations and assumptions. Now, amidst the G20 summit, it seems highly unlikely that the government will unveil its agenda. The details of the 4-day special session will likely only be announced after the G20 summit concludes on September 10. Now, this uncertainty has compelled opposition parties to prepare for their potential surprises from the government. Congress Parliamentary Party Chief Sonia Gandhi has penned a letter to the Prime Minister urging him to clarify the agenda for this session. Remember, this session coincides with reports suggesting that the centre may propose changing India's name officially to Bharat, a news that UN Minister Anurag Thakur has now dismissed. As the parliamentary session approaches, the opposition is also gearing up to hold the government accountable while the government remains secretive about its agenda. So, will the opposition be caught off guard by the government's unexpected moves, as has happened in the past? Or will the government provide some clarity ahead of that session? We'll take that question to our guests in just a bit. But first up, let me break down what Sonia Gandhi, former UPA chairperson, has written to the Prime Minister ahead of this special session. She has said that the special session has been called, firstly, without any consultation or consensus with other parties. She has also said that none of us have any idea of what the agenda is going to be. We have only been communicated that 5 days have been allocated for government business. We most certainly want to participate in the session. Now, this is key because earlier there were some murmurs coming in that the Congress could skip the session if one nation, one election was to be the agenda. But she does add that I hope time will be allocated to the opposition to raise the issues that they want to raise. And it will also be key if there is disruption during this special session, if the opposition doesn't get to debate the issues it wants in the order that it wants, as we have seen in the past. Now, what are those issues that the Congress party wants to debate in Parliament? Sonia Gandhi's letter has actually outlined that as well, and it's a laundry list really of issues that the Congress party wants to highlight. First up is, of course, inflation and unemployment. They've also talked about minimum support price or MSP for farmers. These are obviously issues that have been raised all through the last term, frankly. There is also the issue of the JPC probe demand for allegations against Adani Group. This is also something that has led to disruptions in the last few sessions of Parliament. Law and order situation in Manipur is what has been raised. Rise in communal tension in the country. China's provocations in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. This is also interesting. The Congress has actually now officially batted for the need for a caste census, at least a debate on the need for a caste census. The centre-state relationships is what the former Congress chief has also pointed out, and natural disasters in states. Now, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi has actually responded saying, first up, that functioning of democracy is being politicized. This charge, of course, going to the Congress party and to the larger opposition. Our government, he says, is ready to debate any issue. We hope, though, that the forum will not be used for political gains. And mind you, this is a special session, so there might be an insistence from the government to reduce it to the agenda that it has been called for. He also, though, points out that the agenda for any parliament session has never been promulgated before the convening of parliament. So, therefore, there is no need for the government to actually explain it. Government has answered all questions raised by Sonia Gandhi in the past. Unnecessary bid to create controversy. Now, there has also been some speculation that there could be one or more bills, we don't know for sure, that could be tabled as far as this special session is concerned. And mind you, there is no clarity on this, and it also looks increasingly unlikely that any bill is going to be introduced for that matter, because we don't really know if the work on some of these bills has actually completed. But what are those bills that have been doing the rounds? First, of course, is the one on one election, one nation, one election or simultaneous elections. This is the issue on which the government has recently formed a committee. So, very unlikely that they will be able to table anything on this. But there's been a buzz about UCC as well. Again, there's not really much that has happened on record as far as bill drafting is concerned. The Law Commission is doing its own exercise of inviting opinions from religious bodies and others. finally is the Women Reservation Bill. Now, this is something that has been debated in India pretty hotly for the last 20 odd years, and there are many parties that have in the past opposed it. So whether the government will attempt it again or not remains to be seen. But the big debate that's coming up is this. As this Parliament special session approaches, the Congress is writing to the Prime Minister for clarity. Will the government disclose its agenda?
सोनिया जी ने प्रधानमंत्री को कहा है कि हमारे ओर से 9 महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दे हैं जो हम उठाना चाहते हैं।
अगर कोशिश ये है कि शुरुआत आपकी 1 नेशन 1 इलेक्शन हो और खात्मा इसका 1 नेशन नो इलेक्शन जिसकी भी बात चल रही है, तो उसके हक में कोई नहीं हो सकता।
Congress party, which calls itself the grand old party of the country and which has ruled the country for more than 16 years, more than 60 years, they should not try to politicize this issue.
बहुत ही दुख की बात है कि श्रीमती सोनिया गांधी जी, कांग्रेस पार्टी और विपक्ष ने इसको भी राजनीतिक विवादों में डालने की कोशिश की है।
Let's go across to the guests who are joining us. Niti Jain from the BJP, Mohan Kumaramangalam from the Congress Party. I'm also joined by Group Consulting Editor Nalin Mehta and Rashid Kidwai, who's author and senior journalist, tracks the Congress very closely. A big thanks to all of you for your time. Mohan, let me begin with you. The Parliamentary Affairs Minister has just a short while ago responded to Sonia Gandhi's letter. He's saying that, there is an attempt to politicize parliamentary sessions and hijack them for politics of it all. It has never been a convention that any agenda of the parliament session is disclosed in advance. So why is the opposition getting so jittery about it?
Shivani, I'm not sure what the Parliamentary Affairs Minister is talking about. The monsoon session just got over. There was an all-party meet convened a day before the session. We're at that point now where the decision to convene a session rests with the government, right? It's taken by the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, and then the President issues a notification to that effect. That notification has been issued. There's been maybe 6 times, I think, when we've had a special session, not counting no confidence motions, and every time it has been fairly obvious what the session's been about. If you start from the very first session, which was convened on 14th and 15th August to mark India's independence, the Indo-China War, the special session to mark the special jubilee of India's independence in 1972. So you've had a lot of, 6, I think, main special sessions, and it's always been very transparent and clear what these sessions are going to be about. Now you're in a unique position where you have no idea what the session's about. There is rampant speculation on maybe even the name India being removed or replaced in the constitution to only be Bharat, right? They're interchangeable names. So and there are media reports that say that the agenda will only be finalized after the G20 meet on 8th and 10th. So I think Mrs. Gandhi is well within her rights to send a note at this point saying that can we please discuss these very pressing issues for the country. I'm not even sure on what Mr. Piyush Goyal is saying when he's saying you're trying to politicize it. What is it? A special session is being convened where in 5 days you're not going to have 0 hour. The government says we'll only have the business that we want to conduct. Then we are very humbly saying that could you please discuss these issues?
No, fair enough. But there is 12 days to go before that session. As you said, before the 1 day before the session, surely the government will be expected to bring all parties together. I don't discount that. But I think the politicization question... No, fair enough. Mohan, I think the politicization question is coming from the fact that the day when the notification came or the news came that there will be a special session, all of the opposition parties suddenly acted like, oh my God, this is not democracy, this is not how it functions, this is a way to take attention away from the alliance meeting and so on and so forth. That's politicization of a special parliamentary session.
How's that politicization? It's basically saying that on a day when anyway the government commands a giant portion of the media coverage, on a day when the opposition is going to get media coverage. Let me ask you a counter question saying that what was the need to announce it on that day so far ahead of time? There was no reason to announce it that far ahead, right?
No, but this is a little problematic. When they announce it ahead of time, it's about, you will crib about the timing about your meeting. But when they don't announce it ahead of time, for example, there is, I think, on 16th and 17th. One second. On 16th and 17th, I think the Congress has announced some big plans where even Sonia Gandhi is expected in Telangana. Now, if the government calls for an all-parliamentary meeting on that day, on the 2 days preceding the session, surely you cannot say that this is to ruin our plans in Telangana?
No, we'd have to shift our meeting. It's an internal party meeting. Obviously, we'd have to shift
it
if the government called for a special session. Our point is that we are very much willing to be part of the session, and we think certain issues should be discussed that were left out in the last session, which was washed out because the Prime Minister refused to come to Parliament until finally we had to do a no confidence motion to have him to come and speak about it.
But it would be a little bit unfair to say that the opposition hasn't made all of these points that are enlisted in Sonia Gandhi's letter today. But I'll come to the discussion part in just a bit. Neeti Jain, there is no harm certainly with so much speculation going on that everybody wants to know what this special session is all about, and maybe a one-day notice is not enough to the opposition.
So Shivani, I think it is a good thing that the Parliament and certain organizations and authorities and agencies don't work by public sentiment. There is a procedure, and I find it rather surprising that Congress is a party that has ruled this country for a majority number of period of years, and they don't understand the small procedure that has been going on for a very long time. It is the president who calls for a session, and before the session starts, the agenda is shared with everybody, and then it goes on to the discussion. The all party meeting happens and the discussion happens. So the only thing that I understand from this entire chaos that has been going on for the past few months is that this alliance is super scared. They're behaving like scared cats. The moment something drops, everybody starts jumping and shouting, "Pata nahi kya ho gaya." So everybody has been coming out with different subjects on what this session is going to be about and all of those things. This is a parliament session. This is going to be in the public domain. This is going to be a discussion, and a special session, sir, as you may know, does not have a 0 hour, does not have a private member bill, and does not have the question hour. That is because the government has something in mind that they want to discuss. So they do not want your recommendations on these topics, on what is supposed to be discussed. This is like somebody is calling a meeting and all the attendees attend with कि हम ये discuss करेंगे. भैया जिसने meeting बुलाई है, he knows what he wants to discuss. This is an important matter that they want to take up in the session.
What is that important matter, Neeti?
Like
everybody wants to know what is that important matter.
That is not for us, Shivani, to speculate. No, I understand. I want to know it as well, but it is not for us to speculate sitting on a national television. This is a parliamentary procedure. The government will share the agenda when the agenda is ready, when the time is right.
Okay, when the time is right, the agenda will be shared.
This is nothing hush-hush happening.
No, of course. Fundamentally and ultimately when it happens, it will be in full public display and full public view. But given that it has been announced, and there is obviously so much speculation happening, and mind you, sometimes even BJP leaders and spokespersons are partaking in those speculations and assumptions. What are we supposed to do? Not talk about it at all? I don't think that happens in the news business. But anyways, Nanil Mehta, I want to come to you.
You can discuss all the agendas that you want independently. Independently, every topic should be up for discussion. The BJP has never shied away from any of the discussions on any of the topics.
Okay,
but
fair
to
enough.
say that this is going to be the agenda of the session, I don't think that is not okay.
Okay, but I'll come back to the issue about Congress raising the issues they want to raise in a special session, and could that set the template for disruption in that session? But I'll go back to our political guests in just a bit. Nalin Mehta and Rashid Kitwai, I'm coming to you. Nalin, so much buzz, so much speculation, but there's the G20 coming in. And I don't think anybody expects that the parliament session, the special parliamentary session agenda is going to be told to the public or the opposition before that concludes. But do you feel that, the announcement has itself made so much buzz that it has even caught the government off guard? Because there's like so much speculation going on of what could happen, including one election, UCC, there is, the whole India and Bharat debate taking place.
Well, I think it's not an accident that the special session has been called immediately on the coattails of the G20, immediately after that. And there is, like you said, every day you hear of a new possible agenda. It's the Bharat vis-a-vis India debate, the UCC debate, the one election, one nation debate, all of that. We don't know what the formal agenda of it will be beyond the official statement that it's going to be discussing Amrit Kal. The opposition is legitimately asking for, look, what is the agenda of the parliament? I think what we are seeing is a lot of balloons being floated. We are seeing at a time when the opposition alliance was moving forward in its agenda. They had put together social media committees. They were looking at the common candidates and so on. At just that time, look, the entire news cycle has shifted. You are seeing the BJP trying to set the terms of the political narrative and the opposition reacting. You're also seeing the debate about Sanatan Dharm, for example, and all of that. Now, I think it was interesting today that the Prime Minister gave an interview to MoneyControl and to Network 18 at a time when social media is ablaze with Bharat versus India debate. He didn't get into that. He actually said Delhi is not Hindustan. He used Hindustani words.
Yeah.
So I think what we are seeing is a lot of shadow boxing, a lot of aggression. But you're also seeing the BJP constantly trying to reset the narrative and the opposition reacting. And I think you'll see. I don't see this changing before the special session.
Yeah,
and it may be a total surprise.
We will talk about the Prime Minister's interview to MoneyControl in just a bit after this. But Rashid Kidwai, is that what is rankling the opposition fundamentally? That, here we were meeting in Mumbai. These were 2 days that should have been about us. And we should have stolen the march. And suddenly there are all kinds of news coming in, including the One Nation, One Election panel formation. Then there is the parliamentary session. And the government has just tried to take all of the limelight away. Is that what is hurting the opposition leaders?
Shivani, I think it's a bit unfortunate that there is so much of trust deficit between the government and opposition. We must remember, in a vibrant democracy or in parliamentary democratic system, when we talk about parliament of course has a very important, government has a very important role of functioning of parliament, but so is the opposition and so is the media. Now, what is democracy all about? Democracy is also lot about accountability. It's a lot about, right to information. Citizens, media, opposition, they all are part of it. Now, I don't understand what is this big thing about, what the Parliamentary Affairs Minister has said. He's technically maybe right. And Sonia Gandhi has also raised a political question. But fact of the matter, we all collectively have right to know all those past instances where special sessions was called, and this era of 24/7, news business, social media, you cannot gloss over this thing. We'll be very happy if, the Parliament of India sits and passes the resolution, a special session on Chandrayaan, on G20, compliments ISRO scientists, all those things, and the opposition would want part, would like to be part of it. So why there is this veil of mystery? ये दाल में क्या काला है?
ओके, नीति जैन बताइए, दाल में क्या काला है? इतनी सीक्रेसी क्यों है?
Like I said, that certain things don't happen as per the public sentiment. Let us just wait and see what it is about. You cannot demand that the government works as per the discussions on the media channels. That is not how it happens. And when you're talking about the trust deficit, so the trust deficit is to such an extent that the opposition refuses to believe the government on a special session in the parliament, let alone everything else. This is something that has to come in the public domain, that the agenda is going to be shared. There is no other way that this session going to be taken ahead with. So let the G20 finish. The government will come out with the agenda. But the point here again, I reiterate, is that the opposition is so scared, and the kind of fear mongering that they have been doing. The last session in Mumbai, they came out with media is not free. So, बेचारे media को भी बेचारा बना दिया. So, this is the trust deficit that you're talking about. I think the only trust deficit is among the alliance itself. And they don't know how to collectively go ahead and look at whatever is happening in this country.
Rashid Kidwai, you wanted to add 30 seconds, please?
Yes. Yes, Niti, very quickly, Niti, you see, we are in the world of, the social media 24/7. The Minister of Parliamentary Affairs came on Twitter to, or that what is called an X now, you see, to announce that there will be a special session. Now, why it is not being, said, what is the great, deal of secrecy? What is the politics behind it? That is what I fail to understand.
Sir, public domain में announce करें तो problem, ना करें तो problem. They said there is going to be a session. Let's be prepared. Let's get over the G20. The agenda will come out when it will come out. Sir, जिस दिन हम लोग पार्लियामेंट सेशन ट्विटर पे करेंगे या एक्स पे करेंगे, I think that is when it is appropriate for us to float the agenda on these social platforms. Till then, let's just respect what is happening and the procedures that this country has abided by for a very long time.
Special session of Parliament has been convened without any thought that what will be discussed. Obviously, government has some agenda.
Yeah, but the government doesn't want to disclose it at this juncture.
But then they also have the prerogative.
No, exactly. No, let me come in here. And before I give a last word to Mohan, Nalin, I wanted to ask you this also. There also seems to be a sense, and there is a growing criticism, that especially the Congress that has, been in power for 50 plus years, even when it's out of power, somehow wants to dictate, what government does, how it does it, when it does it, what happens in Parliament all the time. It's, it may be a hangover of being in power for too long, but that's not how it goes. The government of the day has the prerogative to decide.
So I think there are very set rules of procedure, and then there are procedures and guidelines and regulations, and then there are practices. Now, for example, there is, as far as my understanding is concerned, and I'm happy to be corrected by a constitutional expert, there is nothing called a special session. There is just that they should not more than 6 months should elapse between two sessions of Parliament, but you can call for more, and typically there are two sessions. The government has called for a special session now, for want of a better word, it's called a special session. As the Parliamentary Affairs Minister said, he's not incumbent on him to give the business of
the agenda
of the House in advance. It will be shared at that point of time. Now, that's the letter of the law. Now, in the spirit of the law, you could argue, but there has to be a better spirit of give and take, which is what the opposition is saying. You tell us in advance what's the big secrecy about. But I think with the BJP government, we've seen that while there may be certain practices, they are following the rule book. It's the same thing with Article 370. They followed the rule book, but they did what was unthinkable.
Yeah.
So in many ways, if you can adhere to the letter of the law and yet spring a surprise and change practices as we've known it before.
No, that actually adds to the question I was asking. Just because Congress did it a certain way doesn't mean that any party that comes to power has to follow the norms that Congress followed, as long as they are by the book, they are by the letter. Every government will have its own way and thought process of how to function. The Congress way is not the only way in the country. But anyways, that's a debate for another day. Mohan, you wanted to come in? My question to you is...
Yes, Shivani, let me...
Yeah,
Shivani,
one second. Yes, Nalin
Shivani.
first, 30 seconds. Mohan, I'm coming to you. Yes. Nalin?
Shivani, I just want to say that I agree with what Rashid was saying earlier, that there's a complete trust deficit between the opposition and the Congress. No question about it. But don't expect it to get better. We are now in the business end of the election season, which is going to start now. So this is only going to get worse.
Absolutely. Mohan, you can come in. And my question to you was, there's a whole list of business that the former Congress president has talked about. But this is, mind you, a special session. It is not the ordinary session where all of these issues can be raised. Hopefully, the fact that the opposition wants to raise certain issues is not going to be used as a ruse to disrupt this special parliamentary session. Hopefully, that is going to be honored, that this is not where you discuss all the issues that you do generally, and frankly, most of these issues have been discussed. The opposition today cannot claim it, they haven't been discussed in Parliament.
Shivani, whether the issues are discussed or not, it's up to the government clearly, right? Now, to your point, your question now, why should we do things the Congress way? If you want to be opaque and not be transparent, then fine. If that's what the public wants, so be it. Now, I'll respond to the BJP spokesperson who said that the India alliance is scared. India isn't scared. Bharat is scared. Whenever there is mystery around what Mr. Modi is going to announce, whether it be demonetization, whether it be an overnight lockdown, it is a common man who's scared
India
today.
and Bharat
Please do not
is
talk
really
over
not
me. Please
understandable
do not
by
talk
most
over
of
me.
us.
This is ridiculous. Shivani, you've
Yeah,
got to
go
stop
ahead.
this.
Mohan,
She
go
had
ahead.
an unfettered experience.
Mohan,
I did
go
not
ahead.
talk over you. Have the decency to let me finish. Second, she talked about the opposition as if we're a bunch of school children waiting for the principal to convene assembly, or whether it's a CEO and the Prime Minister waiting to convene a meeting of his CXOs. The government, ma'am, as per the constitution, is accountable to parliament. The opposition plays a very important role in parliament. If we are saying certain issues have to be discussed, they should be taken under consideration. The manner in which you dismissed our inputs shows your lack of knowledge or your complete disregard for the opposition as part of the constitution. Third, please do not interrupt me. You had unfettered access to the media at that point. Let me finish. I will be bipartisan now and say that I agree there is a terrible trust deficit between the government and the opposition because we lack people who can work across the aisle. In previous BJP governments, there was Arun Jaitley, there was Sushma Swaraj, there was Venkaiah Naidu. These people were known for working across the line, working across the aisle, and they were known for taking the opposition along when discussing issues and deciding how parliament has to be conducted.
Okay.
You don't have those stalwarts today. You have someone or you have people on the other side who just want to railroad their agenda. And that's not how parliament functions.
Okay. Niti, I have 30 seconds only. You can respond, please.
Please. Yeah, I think all I would recommend for my friend is to kind of read what we're saying. We're not saying we are the CEO, but we definitely are the elected government in the country. We have the right to set the agenda and have that discussion if it is going to be important. To call a special session means something. You've had your time in the monsoon session to completely derail the entire session and not let the parliament function. But we're hoping you are not going to do that in this special session because the agenda seems to be important for the country and that remains the point.
I think they'll make up their mind when they know the agenda.
Right.
1 second. I think they'll make up their mind when they know the agenda, which is
No,
also
I'm
the
not
prerogative
sure
of
they
the
will make up their
opposition.
mind even then.
Okay.
The disruption is the only option that they have these days.
That is something I think we all
that's
don't
an
want.
option
We
that
don't
was
want
endorsed by
disruption.
Mr.
This is a
Jaitley.
special parliamentary session. It should have a little bit of cooperation from both sides. Yes, the issues that Sonia Gandhi is talking about are important. Most of them have been discussed in parliament. I think all of them have been discussed. But there will be time to discuss them again. This is a special parliamentary session and I hope there are no disruptions. The public gets very irritated when they see that, when they want to hear their leaders from both sides of the aisle. I do thank our political representatives for joining us. Nalin and Rashid Kidwai will continue with us as we do discuss the Prime Minister's exclusive interview to MoneyControl.com. As India prepares to host the G20 summit, the Prime Minister unveiled the agenda during this interview. So in an interview with Network 18's editor-in-chief Rahul Joshi, the Prime Minister exuded confidence first of all and made a compelling case of why he thinks he's going to be elected for a third consecutive term. He also elaborated on India's role in the evolving global landscape, addressing key topics such as China, inflation and the upcoming G20 meeting and its implications for New Delhi. Let me quickly break down what the Prime Minister has talked about quite in detail as far as this interview is concerned. So first up, on the G20, the Prime Minister has gone on to say that if you see our motto for the G20, it is Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. This captures our outlook towards the G20 presidency aptly. For us, the whole planet is like one family. In any family, each member's future is deeply connected with that of every other member. So when we work together, we progress together, leaving none behind. This is, of course, on the larger G20 presidency philosophy. Here is what the Prime Minister said on India's role in the new world order. Many believe that global order is shifting. He said, when global leaders meet me, they are filled with a sense of optimism about India. They are also convinced that India has a lot to offer. This, of course, is a point he has made in the past as a departure from earlier eras. And that India must play a larger role in shaping the global future. This has also been witnessed in their support for our work through the G20 platform. There was also a question, of course, on China. Remember, Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, is not coming to the national capital, although that hasn't come as much of a surprise. But on the issue of this division that we are facing, he said, the new world order is multipolar. Every country agrees with another country on a few issues and disagrees on another. These are, of course, extremely pragmatic approaches. He also said, having accepted this reality, a way forward is worked out based on their own national interests. India is also doing the same. In that statement is a reassurance that while other countries are looking out for themselves, so is India. On some domestic issues, inflation is one question that was posed to the Prime Minister. He said the inflation is a key issue that the world faces. First, the pandemic and then the conflict have changed the global inflation dynamics. As a result, both advanced countries and emerging economies are facing high inflation. This is a global issue that needs close cooperation. Of course, the government in the past has also talked about how despite these disruptions, the inflation levels in India have been more or less under control versus what has happened around the world. But this is our next big focus. The Prime Minister on the 2024 elections. He said, in 2014, nobody knew Modi and yet they voted me in with such a huge mandate. 10 years on, they've seen a little bit of Modi everywhere. Whether it is the Chandrayaan mission, in my recent visit to the US. Now that they know me well, I have no doubt that the people will choose correctly again. We're going to take that statement forward and discuss this. This statement shows the Prime Minister something they have talked about in the past, that there is actually no anti-incumbency after 10 years in power, but there is pro-incumbency. Is that the case? And if so, why? We take that forward with our guests.
बड़े बड़े देश यूएस हो या यूके हो या यूरोप हो या चाइना हो, कैसे वो असफल रहे अपने इकोनॉमी को मैनेज करने में, और या तो वो आज स्लो डाउन कर रहे हैं ग्रोथ में या हाई इन्फ्लेशन की दौर से गुजर रहे हैं, या दोनों। और दूसरे हाथ में जो प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने बहुत स्टेडीली उन्होंने इकोनॉमिक मैनेजमेंट किया।
Problem with Mr. Modi is that what he says and what it is done is totally two different things.
Nalin Mehta and Rashid Kidwai continue to be with us. Nalin, you have of course been, looking at this interview and reading between the lines. Why do you feel the Prime Minister is so confident that actually after knowing him for 10 years, the public is going to vote for him again? This is, in other words, the Prime Minister saying that actually after seeing my work, there's going to be pro-incumbency for me, not anti-incumbency. The public is not jaded or in any way disillusioned by his 10 years.
So I think this is, just a month ago at the Red Fort, he said, I'll be back, Terminator-like, and so on. This is the second time he's reiterated that with a quiet sense of confidence in this interview, and he's reading between the lines. He's specifically talking about the fact that Modi was an unknown quantity at national level 14 years ago, and he's now essentially saying, I'm campaigning on my record. But I do think that in this interview, for example, the point that he makes about the democratization of the G20, I think that's an interesting point. Because, there's always been this criticism, what's the big deal? The presidency comes by rotation.
Yes.
So what's the big deal? I think the big deal is that the legacy of India to G20 is there have been 220 meetings in dozens of cities.
Over 60 cities.
8 union territories, and over 60 cities, and that includes both Congress-ruled states and BJP-ruled states. So that's a democratization of an esoteric idea which earlier was perhaps consigned just to diplomatic circles or to the bureaucracy. The PM makes the point that he has never made at least he claimed that he's never made an important policy decision from Vigyan Bhavan. In fact, even when UPI was launched at Talkatora. So I think the point that he's making about democratizing, and by the way, there's a straight line between the Modi government's diplomacy at the bilateral level and the G20 gambit, because in the past when Angela Merkel came, the Japanese Prime Minister came, others came, those meetings were held in Jaipur and other cities, not really in Delhi. So I think there is an interesting thing here which many global observers are also talking about, that the next country that has the presidency this is a new kind of template for G20. It's never been democratized in that manner in any country. So that's a new kind of template.
Yeah, but Nalin, just to come back to the focus that we were on, before I go to Rashid Kidwai also, why do you think, what is that central thing that makes the Prime Minister so confident that actually after watching his performance for 10 years, he's super confident of a verdict? I'm asking this question again because after 10 years, there is obviously, routinely speaking, in conventional politics, talks of anti-incumbency.
Yes. Two or three things. I think the Prime Minister alludes to one of them, that he says that we are now entering an era of decisive mandates. We've seen that in both the last two Lok Sabha elections. We've seen that in state after state in Vidhan Sabha elections. I think you look at a multitude of surveys. The Mood of the Nation survey came out recently. CSDS has done surveys. There is no question that Prime Minister Narendra Modi remains head and shoulders above other political leaders as the most important political brand in the country. There's no change in that.
Right.
Now, there are economic indicators about economic distress. There is a question around monsoon and so on. But that has not changed the popularity of brand Modi. And I think there are two or three things he's certainly banking on. One is this enduring Teflon-like popularity of the Prime Minister, which may work less in state elections, but the national elections is a different ball game.
Yeah.
The second is in a presidential style contest against Modi who. And the third, I think, is that while you have an incipient opposition unity, the real nub when the rubber hits the road is going to be how will that translate into common candidates and who the candidate will be against Mr. Modi. And also, I think there is a sense that he's reaching out. He's very confident about his appeal to the voter, and in a class sense, he's making the point that while there may be distress, who do people trust to solve those problems more than the other? And I think that's what he's really banking on.
No, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, Nalin. Let me take that to Rashid Kidwai also. That seems to be the fundamental problem for the opposition, Rashid. One is his popularity. The Prime Minister's popularity is pretty high despite 2 consecutive terms. There's been no dip, frankly. And we've seen that last time around the BJP increased its mandate, which again, not many saw coming. And the other thing is that regardless of whatever issues there may be, his style of functioning, the fact that he is working 24/7 virtually, he doesn't take a day off. This is a recent RTI disclosure that we have read about. The fact that, he's been focusing on all kinds of things for India. He says there's a little bit of Modi that they've seen everywhere, from the Chandrayaan mission to my recent US visit. There's a recent Pew survey that suggests that people feel India's image has increased or improved under Modi. So his personal charisma and attachment, that's not going down, and that's the fundamental problem for the opposition. There are issues, but they trust Modi.
Yes, Shivani, I think first of all I would want to compliment MoneyControl for this excellent interview. The thing is that nothing is simple in Indian politics. Whatever you say about Indian politics, the opposite is equally true. So while I don't take away whatever Nalin has said, see, there is another perspective. Prime Minister's popularities have always been 50% or more. By recent surveys, some said 73%. But if you look at the BJP, it's getting 31%, 38% of vote. 2014, 2019, there was no pre-poll alliance. There was no major pre-poll alliance. So this way, this becomes, and then you have 2004 story when India was shining. Prime Minister Vajpayee's popularity was very high, and still the verdict was slightly different. So what I'm saying is there is a lot of time. And one last point, Shivani, the way Prime Minister and the BJP has been scouting for some kind of master stroke, some game changer, whether we are talking about special session of parliament or otherwise, it tells you a story. It tells you a story that India Alliance, emergence of India Alliance, is something that has actually, sent some kind of, degree of nervousness in the BJP camp, and they're looking for something. So, जो थोड़ा है, थोड़े की जरूरत है. You see, the BJP wants to make it a foolproof case. In spite of getting this surveys that Narendra was referring to, 300 plus seats, I think the BJP is very, very unsure whether they don't want a hung house kind of situation in 2024.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Rashid. Nothing is a certainty, and I certainly do not ascribe to the view that it's a done deal 2024. But BJP is also a party that never leads anything to chance. So if they're giving their 150%, that's just how they are. Sometimes we read too much into it. But my fundamental question was this: there is no denying that there are issues. But who is against Modi, who can come and say, like he did in 2014, that place your trust in me and I will deliver for you? On top of that, Narendra Modi's delivery has been stupendous, whether the opposition accepts or not.
Shivani, no disagreement what you're saying, but we have a parliamentary system of democracy. There are going to be elections in 543 Lok Sabha constituencies. State after state, it differs. You look at any controversy, there is always the two side. What I'm saying is the BJP itself knows, and it's a good thing politically speaking, it is not sure-footed. And please bear that in mind.
Absolutely. Nalin, you agree with that there's a little bit of discomfort in the BJP ranks because of the opposition coming together? Final 30 seconds, please.
Look, there's no question that there's an election to be fought. This is not a done deal. And I think the BJP is not being complacent at all. There are pockets of worry, as Rashid has said, but at the same time, look, there's a lot of politics to happen over the next 6 or 7 months.
Yes.
At the moment, who's ahead? The opposition has gathered momentum, but the BJP still remains ahead at this point.
Okay, I will leave it at that. I do thank both of you for joining us, and of course, a reminder, you can go to moneycontrol.com to read that full interview. Time for me to slip into a very short break, but here's a reminder, an exclusive conversation is coming up with IOA Chief, former athlete PT Usha. She's spoken to me not just about the upcoming Asian Games, but also the fact that India seems to be ready to host the next Olympics, host the 2036 Olympics. But before that, we are leaving you with the visuals of the silverware and gold utensils that are going to be used for the G20 delegates who are going to be served with this in the upcoming summit in New Delhi.
Voice of Global South Summit, which made it clear that we were a voice for the inclusion of those who felt excluded from the global discourse and institutional priorities. The PM also said how he has given importance to his ties, the country's ties with Africa over the years. Even at the G20, India has given momentum to the idea of the inclusion of the African Union into the G20. When the European Union can be a part of the G20, why not the African Union? The PM also said that we are a nation that looks at the world as one family. Our G20 motto of India itself says that in any family, every member's voice matters, and this is also India's idea for the world too. In G20, there is always also a scope for improvement, such as greater involvement of the Global South and a bigger role for Africa, the Prime Minister said. These are also the areas that India is working on during its G20 presidency, the Prime Minister has told MoneyControl. The PM in fact went on to say that it would also be a good idea to seek the views of the nations outside the G20, especially from the Global South, when the G20 reaches the milestone of 25 years. The PM said such inputs would be very valuable to chart the future course for the next 25 years. India's G20 presidency in 2023 has also placed a great emphasis on addressing the global challenges posed by the debt crisis in low-income and middle-income countries. The PM said we have been diligently advocating for the interests of the Global South in this crisis. India's growth, the Prime Minister said, is not only good for Indians but also for the world. India's growth is clean and green growth. India's growth is being achieved with the human-centric approach that the PM said can be replicated in other countries too. He said India's growth in fact helps further the interests of the Global South. In an earlier interview with the French newspaper ahead of his visit to France earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had also said that the rights of the Global South have long been denied, and this has led to a feeling of anguish among these countries, while he underlined India's role as a bridge between them and the Western world. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given a big interview to MoneyControl, a very, very detailed interview, his first big digital interview before the G20 summit. What does the Prime Minister say? I would basically split it into 5 parts. The Prime Minister, obviously the big headline from the interview is that India's growth is good for the world. PM playing a very, very strong case for India's growth trajectory, how India will become the 3rd largest economy in the world, the roadmap towards the same, but also stressing that India's growth is not just good for Indians, it is also good for the world. India matters on the global stage, and also the Prime Minister speaking in a big way about the India's role in a world which is driven by geopolitical uncertainties because of the Russia-Ukraine war, the need for global credible institutions like the WTO, like the United Nations, and the dangers from financially irresponsible policies like the freebies which are being offered by political parties in India. The Prime Minister interview basically split, I think, major 5 issues. India and the G20, how India's G20 presidency has been one which has been truly democratic events held in over 60 cities, over 220 events. The G20 event was taken out of the traditional like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and taken even to tier 2 cities, even in fact every state capital to UTs, and how it became truly a symbol of India's diversity. PM also speaking about the global south, how India has become the shoulder for the global south and how India has become the voice on the global stage for the global south. In fact, India has been stressing in a big way for the inclusion of the African Union also into the G20. When the European Union can be there, why can't the African Union also be there? And PM laying a strong case for the developing nations of the African Union and other developing nations of global south to find a space and a voice in the G20 structure. PM also speaking a lot about the digital public infrastructure of India, how India has achieved new records in digital public infrastructure. Just now we saw last month how UPI has reached a global high, a historic high of nearly 10 billion UPI transactions in a month. That also the Prime Minister has spoken about. PM has also spoken about reining in inflation, how inflation has become a major issue in the world. Global inflation has at highest levels due to after the COVID pandemic and also due to the Russia-Ukraine war. But India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying to MoneyControl that how his government has helped rein in inflation. In fact, he even mentioned to the recent promise made and the decision taken on Raksha Bandhan, where the price of LPG cylinders has been brought down by rupees 200 for all consumers. The PM also speaking about the roadmap to the 3rd largest economy, saying it's a matter of great pride that India has risen now to the 5th largest economy in the world, and what will be the roadmap for India going ahead to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. Let's first speak about the role the PM spoken about India and G20, when he says that it is important for me to speak a little bit about the backdrop in which India became the president of the G20. There was a pandemic followed by a conflict situation. It posed a lot of questions to the world. It had pushed the world into an era of uncertainty and instability. How India has played a role in its G20 presidency to find a solution to these issues. The PM shows it's well known that the approach of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas and Sabka Prayas in the country, a model that his government has followed in the last 9 years. This, he says, is the guiding principle for global relations as well going ahead. Very important words by the Prime Minister when he says that India's model of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas has been acknowledged and adopted globally.
We're just coming off a stupendous record performance by Indian athletes at the World Championships, which was a perfect precursor to the Asian Games coming up. And who better to look forward to than the current Chief of the Indian Olympic Association, President PT Usha is joining me. Ma'am, thanks a lot for speaking to CNN News 18. When we talk about the Asian Games which are coming up, Indian athletes have set the stage beautifully. Neeraj Chopra winning India's first ever gold at the World Championships. The men's 4x400 meters relay team also setting a record performance. How did that make you feel? Because as a former sprinter yourself, these are the performances we've always been wanting from our athletes.
Actually, I was very happy that Neeraj Chopra has done well, and earlier he has won the Olympic gold medal and even World Athletics also he won the silver. Yes. But this time we are expecting him a gold medal and he won it, and it's good that now the other countries also watching our performance, and we are also in the list of the medal tally in world, and especially in 4x400 meters men also did very well, and it's an unbelievable performance actually. It was a very nice, and the 4 people also done the best there.
Yeah.
So running under 3 minutes, it's not easy, but they have done very good. And I was expecting actually from some of other triple jumper also, from long jumper also. I think this time they have missed it. I think I hope that the new generation is coming good in world level.
Ma'am, when we talk about the Asian Games, obviously in '86 you set the stage alight. So I'm sure every time the Asian Games come, you have a lot of memories that flood you as well. I mean, you won multiple golds and silver as well there.
Yeah, it's lot of remembrance for me. Actually, in 1986 we have gone a big team, and India India didn't get any gold medal before athletics, and when up to that India was positioned in 14th position. So total medal tally, India won only 5 gold medal, 1 from me, 4 gold medal, and 1 from wrestling. So made India to be in 4th position. But I don't want to see that side now. I wanted our all athletes should do good performance. India should do well, and I hope this time Neeraj will start performing, and other team also will do good performance, and we will be in best.
Yeah, I mean, India is number 5 when it comes to the overall medal tally at the Asian Games, and of course we look at a record tally, but I'll come to that in just a bit. I do want to ask you, you know, as a former athlete yourself and a former runner yourself, what is the change you've seen in track and field, you know, disciplines in India? What is the difference you see between from your time to today and from your time to the athletes of the day? Because mentally also it seems like the attitude of the Indian athletes has changed quite a bit. They believe that they can beat the best.
See, there is no comparison in our time and now. Because my time nothing was there, no infrastructure facilities at all. And I have seen the synthetic track when I went to Moscow Olympics, and I didn't get any international exposure. Now every facilities we are providing for world class now, especially for those who are going to give the world class performance, sending them outside the country and giving all the facilities, and even for the food you take about, and their infrastructure training purpose, and multi gym or food part, the nutrition level, and if they get injuries, we have a lot of rehabilitation centers, especially example I will say the Reliance is having the hospital for players in Mumbai. There are lot of help is for our players, no? So I think this type of company should come forward for that. Now we are having everything, players are having everything, because injury is the part and parcel of the sports. So when it comes injury, it should recover also very soon, and then only the continuity will be there for them training. So lot of changes. Exposure, the main one is exposure, sending our athletes for the exposure purpose for Europe. I missed medal by 1/100th of a second only is a lack of exposure and experience. Me, I have not done any exposure before going to the Olympics. In my life, I did only 2 races in India, 400 hurdles, and 3rd race was pre-Olympics there. I won it, and that is the only experience I ran in the Olympics. So
times have changed.
Times, no social media, nobody knows that we have done that and this thing. Now everything is there. Full support from the government, full support from sponsors, and everything is there for our athletes now, players now.
But it must make you feel nice that India has made such a journey, because from your time to today, as you're saying, there's been a sea change in Indian sport, and especially Olympic disciplines.
It should be, because it's good that now world is looking our performance now. We are also is coming in the world medal tally, It looks so exciting. It's very happy and proud.
I'm sure as a former athlete and now as a president of the IOA, this is almost a dream come true, isn't it? To see an Indian winning a gold medal at the World Athletics, it was something we had only dreamt of.
Great job, great. The big inspiration for all young players, Neeraj ji sir.
But ma'am, mentally also, do you feel that the young generation that is coming up has more belief, more confidence, do you feel?
In that case, if you say without anything, in our time we can't do anything. Only the old generation had the mental power. With that we have done it without any facilities. So if you compare about all thing, I think our players should be more on. They should believe on more on their power. Now it should be
absolutely. So the likes of Milkha Singh and you did it with literally no support.
No support, nothing. Only the mentally, maybe you can say I'm mentally strong, and hard work. We have done it. So if our athletes improve that part also, and we will win more medals in the world.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Sports Minister Anurag Thakur has talked about it, and the sports system in the country feels very confident that this time India will win a record medals at the Asian Games, improving the performance in Jakarta in 2018. So are you confident? Are you hopeful of a record performance? Is there anything particular that you really want from these Asian Games?
100% actually I wanted our athletes should do well, good performance and more medals. And I always want to think on positive only. Whatever the minister says, I wanted to, it should come in big way. I also want more medals, and I hope our athletes will do good performance. And good performance and a good world-class performance in every discipline.
The IOC session is coming up in India only for the second time and after a gap of 40 years. So as the IOA president, how excited are you, and how do you think this will help India and Indian sports to host this session in India after such a long time?
This is the huge occasion for our India in Olympic movement, and it's the good opportunity for us to showcase our capability for to the IOC members, especially support of the Nita Ambani's IOC member, and will show that we are ready to host Olympic in our country.
You teased my next question, because I was going to ask you about the about India bidding for the 2036 Olympics. The sports minister has also talked about it. You feel India is ready to do so?
Of course we are ready, but I don't want to comment on bidding Olympics now, but we are positive on it.
Yeah, because recently Thomas Bach, the IOC chief, has also spoken to CNBC exclusively, and he talked about how the IOC will provide all support and how it will be good, you know, for the larger Olympic movements to have India, which is the most populous country in the world, to bid for the Olympics, and that, you know, this will be something that India can pull off. So do you think that 2036 would be a good target for us?
Yeah, it's a good target for us. At the same time, when we are going to show that we are also a strong Olympic, we are going to be part of the strong Olympic event, and not to Olympic in medal tally also, and the same thing to host also.
To host also, because that's always a big occasion for any country to have the Olympics in their own country.
Exactly.
Can I ask you, what do you think India needs to do to be ready to host such a big games, in terms of infrastructure or in terms of, you know, the effort from the government and the IOA together?
Okay, I think in that case, I think government also is having lot of, our Prime Minister also is vision is there to host the 2036 Olympics. So we are getting lot of positive support from the government, and we are already have a good infrastructure facilities in Ahmedabad, and most of our place, I don't know where we are going to, but I think we can do that. And the same, we are, only our worries was the world standard performance. Now we are coming up in performance level also. When we are hosting the Olympics in our country, we should be in strong in medal tally also.
No, that's a very good point, because hosting is one thing, but if Indians don't do well when we are hosting the Olympics, it doesn't have the same impact. So you want the athletes to also get to that level, and now finally that is happening.
And finally that is happening. When we have a vision on hosting the Olympic, so same time we have started winning the medal also. It makes me so happy now.
Okay. Well, the Olympics are barely a year to go now. But, you know, there is another buzz I want to talk to you about, which is about cricket coming into Olympics. We are hearing that at this IOC session, maybe the vote will happen where cricket will come back into the Olympics. It was only played once. Anything more that you can tell us on that?
I don't want to comment on it now. Maybe let IOC session over, then we'll talk about it.
But ma'am, overall, what would be your message to Indian athletes as they, you know, embark on yet another Asian Games?
Because now everybody is set on their focus on Asian Games now, and I think our athletes are ready for it, and they should focus on their event, and I hope that our athletes will do best performance in the coming Asian Games. Whatever they want, we are there to provide them, and we have already done also, and we are ready to do also, and we are waiting for the medal, and whole India is waiting for their performance now.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, PT Usha.
Wishes.
It's India's G20 presidency year.
The Global South
will shine.
The test of its multipolarity rhetoric.
Countdown to the big ticket event. Complete transformation for Delhi.
Unprecedented capital security.
Delhi becomes the world's diplomatic hub.
A 4-day lockdown and watertight security.
Quick response teams in place. World embraces India's youth.
As top world leaders come calling. Vishwamitra leads global agenda.
Coverage like no others. Only on CNN News 18.
Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsuman. Let's start with the good news first. We are getting some fantastic images. They've taken the left, right, center images and put it together and given us a color image of what's happening on the moon. ISRO releasing an anaglyph image of the lunar surface. Anaglyph is a simple visualization of the object or terrain in 3 dimensions from stereo or multi-view images and requires red and cyan glasses. For this entire 3D effect. ISRO is unveiling a 3D visualization of the entire lunar lander Vikram. This anaglyph was created from stereo navigation camera images on board the rover Pragyan. Fantastic, isn't it? They're doing some phenomenal work. While on Chandrayaan, let's also get you an update on Aditya L1. Is on its maiden solar mission. Aditya L1 successfully completed its second maneuver and its ground stations at Mauritius, Bengaluru and Port Blair tracked the satellite during this operation. The new orbit attained is 280 kilometers into 40,225 kilometers around the Earth. The third maneuver is scheduled for September 10th around 2:30 a.m. So that's when it will be. So in the morning of September 10th, the G20 final day, that's when we should also know an update on the third maneuver of Aditya L1. Meanwhile, Vivek Ranjan Agnihotri and Pallavi Joshi's upcoming film, The Vaccine War, also creating history. The first Indian film to have a song launch at the New York Times Square. And of course, a filmmaker tweeted and said on the eve of G20 India, who would have thought that one day the Nasadiya Sukta from the Rig Veda would be actually performed in Kathak at the Times Square. And he said nobody can ever destroy what is Sanatan. This actually happened just around the time where this Bharat and India fight. More importantly, the bashing and people wanting to eradicate Sanatan Dharma has come to the fore. And he said, look, this is what's happening across the world. Sanatan Dharma is only growing. Bharat is only growing. And as Bharat replaces India on the President's G20 invite, spiritual leader and Sadhguru and also actor Amitabh Bachchan, both of them have tweeted Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Let's then also take this forward, ladies and gentlemen, at the Bharat Mandapam. When G20 Bharat India 2023 happens, is perhaps the big story. I'll come to that, but there is also one more update. Vaishno Devi, then Shah Rukh Khan offering prayers at the Sri Venkateswara Swami temple in Tirupati. The actor was accompanied by his daughter Suhana Khan and co-actor Nayanthara. His film Jawan selling over 10 lakh tickets through advance booking, collecting nearly 40 crore rupees. Jawan has already started earning spree and of course collecting around 250 crore after selling the rights of the film to T-Series. So imagine, ladies and gentlemen, he's walking in or rolling in money even before the release. That's the magic of Shah Rukh Khan. But now let's talk about the other magic that India is slowly weaving, or let's say Bharat is weaving, steeped in Sanatan roots. As Bharat rises, is that the message at G20 Bharat?